Kicked off. My name is Jeff Hawk. I'm the Public Affairs Officer for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Pittsburgh District. I can't tell you how glad I am to see the number of people that have come out to this meeting. We send our invites out and then it's a guess as to how many people are going to show up. And I'm happy that you came out on a very chilly, promising to get more chilly night for this kickoff. This is the Mahoning River Basin Water Management Update Kickoff Meeting. We call this a kickoff meeting because, as you'll learn, we're just getting started on an effort to optimize operations at our 3 reservoirs in the Mahoning River Basin. Our purpose is to inform you of the funding, the work involved, and the timeline in regards to this update. We're very early in the process. In fact, this is our first public meeting, and we just received funding in December, so this is really our first action. We want to inform you and we want to involve the public at the very earliest moment, and we'd like you to stay with us through this entire process. I'm going to switch slides here a little bit. Let's try it like this. Okay. All right. The intent, the purpose is to provide an update to the public regarding the funding and timelines. The intent of the water management update is to optimize the operations at our 3 flood risk management dams in the Mahoning River Basin to better balance the needs of the people who live and who visit the region. We are recording tonight. We hope to put this up on YouTube. If you're camera shy or would rather not be in the camera shot, it's pretty tight on us up here right now. I just want to make you aware that we are recording. This would be a good time to silence your cell phones or to shut them off. If you do have to take a call, we understand. We'd ask you to just go to the lobby to make that call or to take a call. We're very interested in having your contact information. We promise not to bother you too much, but we would like to let you know when we have public meetings or other actions associated with this initiative that you may be interested in it. So there are comment cards out there that you can put your information on and just say add me to the roster, or provide comments that you think would be pertinent to this initiative or important for us to know. And we'll start collecting names, and we'll get a good coalition of people together, and hopefully we'll see that coalition grow as we move along in this initiative. The agenda tonight, pretty simple. Opening remarks, short presentation, and we wanted to save most of the time for you. We want to introduce this topic to you, tell you enough about it to get a good discussion going here. And throughout this, we want to listen. You people are the ones that know this basin, that live in this basin, that work in this basin. So we want to give you the opportunity to engage with us, and we certainly commit to engage with you. I think that's pretty much it for me. I'd like to introduce the 2 people that are up on the stage with me. Our commander, Colonel Kobe Short, commander of the Pittsburgh District, sitting directly behind me, and Lena Hawkins, who's our deputy district engineer. And at this time, I'd like to ask Colonel Short to come up and make some opening comments and start the presentation.
All right, thanks, Jeff. Hey, what an awesome venues, first trip up here. And we walked around a little earlier. Pretty neat venue here, and wasn't expecting this, so appreciate that. And pretty neat place to be. They turned the movie star lights on here. I was just joking with Lena that somewhat intimidating here, but she was at her house the other day with the plumber and found a snake skin that she's dreadfully afraid of. So this is nothing compared to that. And this pales in comparison to getting shot at in Afghanistan. So I think we'll be all right here tonight. But no, they're going to keep this brief. A couple things I want to do to introduce, because several new faces out here from several in the crowd that I do know. One is to give you an overview of the Army Corps of Engineers and what we do in Pittsburgh. 2, we're going to talk about and explain our upcoming effort, which is what Jeff just talked about with an update to the water control manuals and the Mahoning River Valley Basin here. And then 3rd, give you the opportunity to ask questions and us to provide some comments. But first, I do want to introduce real quick some of the people I have here with me in the team. So in addition to Lena, myself, and Jeff up here on the stage, there's several out here in the audience that are part of the team. So real quick, I'm going to introduce their names, and so you put a face to a name, and it might be someone after we're done that you would want to come up and speak with as well. So first, I have Lieutenant Colonel John Klink, my deputy commander here. He was up here earlier this year, late last year, so you know him. Thank you, John. Kathy Griffin, my chief of operations. Craig Carney, the project manager. Rose Riley, who is my lead for water quality. Megan Gottlieb, the lead for the water management. Andrea, she came in, Andrea Carson, who's my environmental planner. And then we have our reservoir manager, so our resource manager, Doug Kreider from Kirwan, Bill Spring from Mosquito Creek, Chuck Oppett from Berlin, and then their boss, Evan Skornick, Evan's up there, he is, who's our northern area resource manager. And lastly, I have Dane Somerville. I'll introduce Dane as well. He's my congressional liaison, helps with our outreach, and appreciate his help. And I will introduce Paul White over there too. He's the young captain who's done a great job trying to set this up. So thanks for that. Real quick, I also want to recognize some of the federal elected officials here. Tonight I have Miss Dawn Baker, who's here from Congressman Johnson's office. And Dawn, thanks for coming out. Not only Congressman Johnson's office, but Congressman Ryan have been instrumental in being able to procure the money, the $1 million that we have to conduct this study. So thank you very much. And then also, there's lots of insight we've had with the partners, both state, federal environmental agencies, and so on. Councils of Government and the Watershed Association, Eastgate, when we talked about several just early before the meeting. But we'd like to introduce or recognize Sabrina Christian Bennett there, who's the Portage County Commissioner. And thanks, Sabrina, for coming out here tonight. Okay, lastly, just recognize I met several out here as well, the business owners and people from the community here in the greater Youngstown area that made the trip out here on this cold night. Okay, let me see if I can operate this here. Okay, so Pittsburgh District. Just want to take a couple moments here for those who may or may not know what we do in Pittsburgh. So we'll give a quick Pittsburgh District 101. So, we consist of approximately 700 employees, about half who work in downtown Pittsburgh and half who work out in the communities. And so you can see on our map here where we have 16 reservoirs as well as 23 locks and dams on the Ohio, Monongahela, and Allegheny rivers. Now we as Pittsburgh are one of 43 districts across the United States and overseas, for example, Korea, Japan. And the way we're set up is through watersheds. So if you look at kind of the outline of our map here, let me get my laser pointer here. This is our boundary, and any drop of rain that hits in here is going to either flow past the point of Pittsburgh, or it's going to flow into the Ohio River here, which is where the Mahoning River into the Beaver goes, and past the Hannibal Lock and Dam on the Ohio. So that's kind of how our boundaries are existing, and so we own regulatory and control that water within that area. So we touch parts of 5 states, mainly western Pennsylvania, but also northeast Ohio, parts of New York State, West Virginia, and a sliver of Maryland. So, as mentioned, the commercial navigation is probably our primary mission there on the 3 rivers. We have more locks and dams than any other district in the United States, and we take a lot of pride in that. Last year, 45,000 barges, over $5.5 billion of commodities that traveled on that. So just a huge economic driver for the region there. The Port of Pittsburgh is the nation's 3rd largest inland port, which is impressive, being so far inland at the headwaters of the Ohio River. We mentioned the 16 reservoirs, 3 which we're going to specifically talk about tonight, but we have 16, 2 down in West Virginia, with Stonewall Jackson here and Tiger Lake, and then all the way up in through western PA there. But these prevent billions of dollars of flood damage. Just yesterday, there was an article in the Post-Gazette about how 2018, one of the rainiest seasons on record, and prevented over $1 billion of flood damage for our district, just based on our ability to be able to hold the waters and keep the rivers under a lesser state. During the drier times, though, these reservoirs provide water for both water quality and the navigation on these rivers to ensure that we can have those commodities up and down. We also have a few other things called our 80 local flood risk management projects. The famous one is the Johnstown Flood Control Project. But these are the smaller things. We're getting a lot more interest in those because of the topography of the region. We have over 80 of those, and they prevented over $2 billion of damage within their lifespan. And then lastly, just with our district, we have a lot of engineers. We're the Corps of Engineers, and so we're almost the federal government's architect engineer company of choice. And so we have the ability to design, mainly for our civil works mission that is out there. But a lot of patriots that work there. And on that note, we highlight our emergency power network. So one thing, Pittsburgh, with we'll say the lack of natural disasters, at least compared to the coastal areas, we have a thing called the Tent Power Mission. And so whenever you saw the hurricanes hit the Texas or Gulf Coast or North Carolina, South Carolina area, in Pittsburgh, what we do is we have a temporary power mission. So with under the partnership with FEMA, Pittsburgh, we mobilize and operate all the contracts for temporary power that goes out to these disaster areas. So for example, if we need temporary power of generation at a hospital, a nursing home, schools, things of that nature on how FEMA and the state organizations determine, we operate those contracts, and we have many patriots within the Pittsburgh District who will go on site and ensure that our contractor gets that on the ground. So that's a mission that we take a lot of pride in, and has done that. We continue to do that today. It's been over 500 straight days. We're working a typhoon out in the Far East right now, believe it or not. But been very busy there. Lastly, just kind of want to say with Pittsburgh District, I've been in command for about 7 months now. I'm originally a Hoosier. I thought I'm pretty patriotic, and been all over the world and country, but you know, having come to Pittsburgh area and here in Northeast Ohio, truly been impressed with the patriots that we have here and the ability to serve our nation. Okay, so the purpose of tonight's meeting, though, we're going to narrow down here to the Mahoning River Valley. All right, there we go. So the Mahoning River Basin consists of, you can see, over 1,100 square miles. And we have 4 reservoirs in that area. The 3 you see, the Berlin, Kirwan, and Mosquito Creek, as well as we have Shenango Reservoir, which feeds into the Beaver there, Mahoning and the Beaver River, which then goes into the Ohio. So there's kind of 4 that work in this area. And these are the counties here in Northeast Ohio, and then that basin joins in Lawrence County there across the border, which flows into the Ohio. So the 37.7%, mentioned that a little earlier, and I had a conversation out back. So if you look at the Mahoning River area there, and we take 100% of the land area, there's 37%. If a raindrop falls within the shaded area, which I'll point out, then we can control that. Control that meaning it will flow into our reservoirs. So for example, here is Berlin, here would be Kirwan, and here would be Mosquito Creek, which butts up here against Shenango. And so 37.7% of the watershed we are controlling there from our reservoirs. Just in FY18, you see the dollar amount of the savings that those reservoirs had for the area. Go to the next slide here. Okay, so why do we do this? These are a few pictures, and many of you may know this from in the room, but this was a terrible flood event in 1913. And through the Flood Control Act of 1938, that's when Congress authorized the funding to build build Berlin and Mosquito Creek dams, with the primary purpose of preventing the flood risk to the downstream communities. Kirwan was authorized in a Flood Control Act of 1958. But this 1913 flood here, the death toll was somewhere between 367 to 467 from the records we were able to dig up, with 94 towns affected, over 220 bridges that were destroyed, and 33,000 buildings that were flooded out. Now this happened as far south as Cincinnati, but actually Northeast Ohio suffered the most damage and loss of life from that flood. Over those 4 days, 7 to 9 inches of rain fell, which then caused the flooding that you see from a few of these pictures. You can see the Federal Street there in Youngstown on the one picture. So here are our dams. So Berlin Reservoir, all of the flood risk management dams had multiple authorizations, and they competed with each other. So Berlin was completed in 1943, and as mentioned, authorized under that Act of 1938. Is authorized for flood control, low flow augmentation, which adds additional flows into the rivers for the Mahoning River to dilute pollutants or to cool industrial outputs, water quality as well, water supply, fish and wildlife enhancement, and recreation. The reservoirs behind these dams had storage allocated for the flood control, the low flow augmentation that we just talked about. So there's 249 square miles, and of that 38% I mentioned, 22% of it is on the Berlin Reservoir. Similarly, on Mosquito Creek, completed construction there in 1944. You'll see the same purposes there, and it has a 97 square mile watershed with 8.5% of the basin. And lastly, the Kirwan Reservoir. A little lesser square mileage, a little more capacity there with the 7%, and it was built a little bit later in 1966, but the same purposes and why we constructed those reservoirs. So that's a summary of the mission that we have in Pittsburgh and the infrastructure and the missions that we have up here to help with the flood risk mitigation, the low flow augmentation, and the other missions that we have. Again, as mentioned before, we're fortunate to have received money because the way we've been operating up here has been happening the same way it has for several decades. And what this money allows us to do is to take data, look at climate change, look at several different factors, and be able to optimize this network that flows into the rivers. So with that, I'm going to let Lena Hawkins, my deputy, talk through that. Lena has over 30 years of experience in Pittsburgh District as my deputy, and I'm going to let her walk through what this study is going to entail. Lena?
Okay, good evening. So, first of all, I want to talk about the funding. We have been budgeting to do a water manual update for quite a while. It has not made the budget, and that's significant. When you think about all the projects the commander mentioned, and nationwide there are so many more. There are more maintenance needs than there is funding actually to support them. And so when it comes to items like these water control updates, they really don't quite make the cut. So we weren't surprised this year that in the president's budget it did not make the cut. However, there was something called a work plan. And many of you probably know Congress holds the power of the purse. And so Congress has decided over the years that they will give the Corps additional funds in what they call a work plan and prioritize that. And so this year, it's very, very rare, but this year we were actually given funding to do this update. And you can see we're given over $1 million to do an update for these 3 reservoirs. And really, you all need to look at yourselves because you influence you've had a large influence in that happening. And really, I'm always very pleased to see how the public can influence and make change. So that's a good thing. Just want to point that out. So why is this effort important? Why do we do these kind of updates? First of all, a lot of things have changed since we originally came up with this plan. I mean, you all are well aware of the reductions in industry, the changes in population. There's new users of the river that are still impacting water quality. It's just a change in who those users are. And also what has changed since this was constructed was recreation, and now that's very important to the area, and we recognize that. What hasn't changed is the risk of flooding. We really have to pay attention to that. I mean, only recently, Berlin reduced the flood crest at Leavittsburg by 7 feet. That's incredible. And we still have water quality needs. So that's important reasons why we need to do this. Things do change. Okay, so I thought I'd take a minute and explain what is a water control manual. Many of you are aware of it. If you're in the Berlin watershed, you're really aware of what that is. We've talked about that a bit. Some of you may not, so for those of you who don't, I thought I'd take a minute and explain this. So why do we need the water control manual? Well, first of all, we're required by policy, internal by the Corps, must do. But really, it's a reference for us as we manage the project. So kind of like your car. Your car comes with a manual. Comes with a manual for a reason, because things happen and you need to understand what's going on, how the car was built, what could impact the car to be able to potentially fix it or do what you need to do. And so that's another reason why we do it. Now, a subset of the water control manual is a water control plan. And simply put, the water control manual tells us how to operate the gates. Do we open them up, let water out, lower the lake level? Do we keep them closed a little more? Keep the lake level to a certain level? Do we close them a lot more? Let it rise. So there's reasons for all of these. And one of the things I really do need to point out is this lake is a multi-purpose facility. And so with competing authorities on that lake, we do have lake level changes. And you will see, I don't know how many lakes you're familiar with, most of the core lakes are multi-purpose, so their lake levels change. Some a lot, some a little. We have some lakes, like Tigard in West Virginia, that lake level change is much greater than Berlin. And then you're aware of Mosquito, which is much less. So it just depends on what the authority is, what the purposes are, the depth of the lake. There's a lot that goes into that. So, water control manual process update. As you can see on this, it's going to take, the inputs are going to take 12 to 18 months, the outputs are going to take 12 to 18 months. So the first question you're going to ask is, okay, what happens this year then? Because you don't really want to wait 24 months, 2 years to 3 years for something to happen. So, I want to talk about that first. Many of you know for the Berlin Lake, we sent a deviation request, which we're required to do if we want to operate off of the original plan. We have to send that to our division office, and the division commander has the authority to approve our request or disapprove our request. And so when we pulled that together last year, we did not, actually we weren't funded for it, so with the extra funds that we did have, we pulled together as much information as we could. However, our division office felt that we hadn't adequately ensured that we were going to reduce the risk enough, and therefore they weren't confident enough in us to let us make that deviation. So what's changed for this year? This year, we've talked to our division office, and they're on board with being on our team to take another look at this. And depending on the plan that the team comes up with, it may or may not even require a deviation request. And when you think about it, if you've got someone on your team, when you go up for a deviation request who's from the office that's going to approve the deviation request, I think that's a good sign. And I will say, and I'll speak for Megan and as well as the whole office, we were really pleased that Division wanted to work with us. They're very anxious. They think we can come to a solution, but we have to look at it and validate that. So from my perspective, this is huge. I've never had someone from Division want to be on the team and want to try to get this to work. That's amazing. That's great. If we are successful, there still are no guarantees, I want to make sure I say that up front, that we will be able to keep that level throughout the entire time period that you want to. Again, there are certain conditions that would come into play. For instance, if we had a drought, that would be an extreme event that would cause that sort of change. But I have to say I'm very pleased that they're more than willing to work with us and to try to come up with a solution for this challenge. Getting back to the plan, we talked about, and I really want to go through this, the inputs, 12 to 18 months, and you can see that list. A lot of this is very linear, which means we have to have the hydraulic and hydrology modeling before we can do the water quality monitoring, etc. There's a lot that's very linear. Some can be done at the same time, but that's why it takes so long. However, we do need information that you all have. You live in the area. You can help us shape some of this. Help us with some of the economics. Maybe you know that some university did some study on water quality or water monitoring. If we don't have to duplicate that information that already exists, that will shave off more time. And that would be very helpful if that can occur. So we will engage with you all, and if you have that sort of information, please let us know. We'd love to have it and use it to help inform the final result here. After we finish with the inputs, the outputs is really a lot of analysis of all that information, documentation, and potential changes. And one of the best things that you all did in influencing the funding is you did it for all 3 reservoirs, which allows us to look at the basin, as we're calling it, the Mahoning Basin versus one reservoir specifically. That would be more of a challenge to try to get the balances, but this way we have a better opportunity to really work and potentially meet all the requirements of the entire basin. With that said, I'm going to turn it back over to Colonel Short. It's sticking.
Thanks, Lennon. Hey, so some of the short-term things, we're going to throw this up. There's several things we're working on. We're kind of give an update on that. And so these are a lot of the concerns and interests. Obviously, the reducing the risk of flooding, but working with our partners from the state as well as local there with the ecosystem for the fish and wildlife is a huge part, especially what our resource managers do on a day-to-day basis. The invasive species, not so bad, but the removal of the low-head dams, I spoke to a few people out in the audience there as well. We might be able to discuss that here in a little bit, but we are working to be partners in that endeavor here in the Youngstown area along the Mahoning. As you can see, though, some of these are data collection type things, and other are touchy-feely, less quantifiable type things. And those are where, as Lena mentioned, we need the feedback and stuff. 2 things I would like to highlight from a short term and what we're looking at. First would be the Berlin Reservoir, as Lena mentioned. This is a separate effort. Again, the effort that we would have on a short term this summer is separate from the $1 million we just talked about, which will be the long-term study to update the entire. So we are pursuing that. Just last week, as we mentioned, we had a meeting with our division, which was very promising. And I think that the efforts that we've had as Pittsburgh District, with the help and encouragement of several in the audience, has given, I think, an appetite across the enterprise to be able to take some action on that. Our boss, Lieutenant General Simonite, used the term revolutionize as with the current administration, we're looking to find places to optimize and save and do things in a new way. And I think we're right for that. I think in the next few weeks we'll have an opportunity to make some progress and potentially be willing to, and we can discuss ability for us, and we'll come out and meet with you to update and give consistent updates on where we're at. The second is at Mosquito Creek. This past summer we had some blue-green algae blooms there. What we've done on that is the research and development arm of the Corps of Engineers, which is called ERDIC, the Engineer Research and Design Center, which is located in Vicksburg, Mississippi. They came out late last summer and fall. We're going to continue to work with them as well as some of the state and local agencies in order to try to address that. But we're always looking for the partners there in that. Okay, this next slide here just shows a few things going on at each of the 3 of the facilities within the Mahoning River. So I mentioned Mr. Bill Spring is in the audience, and on June 15th, we have a celebration of our 75th anniversary of the construction. If anybody's interested in helping participate in the activities on that Saturday, Bill will be here to talk to you as we're in the planning stages for that, and it should be a great event. Mentioned a few other things on there. The riprap on the dam crest at Mosquito is a project we're undertaking. At Kirwan, we have debris clean out of the spillway. And again, this just kind of gives you an appetite that from our budget, we're continuing to pour money and investment into these facilities for the ability to recreate, and then also for us to conduct our mission from the flood control. At Berlin, you can see the roofing and flooring in the bathhouses, which has been a long time coming. And Ms. Griffin said that'll execute this year, right, Kathy? And then Mahoning, as mentioned there, is just the low-head dam removal. We're pretty excited about that opportunity, which kind of presented itself here in the last 6 months, and looking forward to some partnerships there. So as we kind of wrap up here, I just want to again encourage you that this is just kind of the kickoff event to let you know what we procured this money last month. The team is getting formed, and we're going to start poking around up here, I guess we'll say, for the next 1 to 2 to 3 years there. And that will be the long-term effect. But what can we do in the near term? Hey, we need your participation. So whether you have a neighbor, a friend, or someone who couldn't make it tonight, as we got your information, we will be putting out other notices to probably be more formal setting where we can actually get good feedback so that we can incorporate the opinions and the desires and the wants and the needs from a, I don't want to say constituent, but from a public nature, and then tie that into the requirements that we have from a data collection standpoint to make the optimal solution. But hey, an awesome opportunity that we have here. Again, thanks to the congressmen for their efforts, Congressman Johnson and Ryan, to procure that. And you should feel blessed and lucky to be in this region, because believe me, I have several peers in differing districts who would also request this, and it doesn't come their way. So I think we're blessed and have this opportunity to do this. Okay, I'm going to turn it back over to Jeff here and move on to the next session.
I have to get my eyeglasses on. It's just because I'm humble, it's not because I need them. Okay, let me turn to the next. So I appreciate your attention while we work through this presentation. We want to get to your comments now. Let me get to a couple of ground rules. Oh, first let me go back. You don't have to wait for our next meeting to communicate with us. In fact, we'd prefer you did. Talk to us. There are a lot of different ways to get involved. Come like our Facebook page in Pittsburgh, and each one of the reservoirs has a Facebook page. Send comments through there. Give me a call. Send an email. Some of that information is on the comment cards. But please don't wait till the next meeting. If you have an urgent need, or you have a comment that you think is relevant, or if you know somebody who can help our situation and help inform us of issues in the basin or opportunities in the basin, please let us know. Okay, just want to go over a few ground rules. We have a couple of mics set up, and we want to capture your questions and your comments. So I would ask that if you have one, we can just line up between this mic, which is over on the external part of that second, in between that second column, and we have one over here also. And if you would rather not get up and make a comment, we're willing to take your comment and read it ourselves here at the meeting. We do have comment cards, so if you want a comment card, just raise your hand and we'll get one to you. You can fill it out and we'll read it here at the meeting. Or we can take it also back to the district with us, and it can be part of our public record that we create for this initiative. So we'd ask you to ask a question and a follow-up. We want to get around to everybody that has something to say tonight. And then if we get around to everybody and there's additional comments that want to be made by somebody, then we'll go ahead and leave the mic open for them. Okay, I think that's it. Do we have anybody who would like to go to the mic stand and make a comment? Take this gentleman here. Looks like he's going to be first.
Thanks again, everybody, for coming out here. Everybody from the Corps. This is awesome. What is the time frame for the next deviation request, and how quickly can we get that response back from the district?
Sure. So I think probably I'll correct you. What we had just discussed recently is deviation is the wrong word to use, and we think we have the opportunity here to adaptively manage in a way where at the district level, in partnership and conjunction with our higher headquarters, are working hand in hand to be able to minimize the risk that last year we weren't necessarily able to quantifiably prove. We've done a lot of work over the winter and last fall, some things we learned. And so I don't want to put a timeline on that, because we're not planning on sending a deviation request in. But as I mentioned earlier, we're willing to meet, I'd say, on a monthly basis, but we're still a few weeks out from doing that as we try to solidify that plan. One thing I kind of tell my team, and I'll let Megan comment here in a second as well, is, with 43 districts across the country, as I mentioned, and lots of different reservoirs, You can't have a rogue district commander just out there saying, keep water here or keep water here. And so that's why we do have policies and procedures. And one of the things I want to make sure we do is we have clear lines to be able to operate in. But we think there's a lot of room for interpretation and some opportunities we have to be able to meet some of the needs and desires that people are looking at. Megan, anything to add on that?
No, Seth, right? Yeah.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
no, what else? Not working?
Megan's our water manager for those in the
I'll just talk
audience.
really loud. Like Colonel Short was saying, we're going to be working with our division office to see if we can operate these reservoirs with some operational flexibility that's already given to us in those water control manuals. We may not have to put forth a deviation request for that. So that's kind of where we're taking it. It's still loose because we're still trying to flesh out those ideas and what that may look like. And like Jeff was saying, feel free to engage with us. Ask us what our plans are going. We're going to try to keep those plans current and open and forthright to the public so that it's open and transparent so that you know what we're doing too and how we're trying to best manage the resources within the watershed given what we're currently authorized for while we do go into this multi-year study.
And just to confirm, the intent is to have whatever this flexibility is applied to the 19 season, correct?
Absolutely.
Perfect. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Yes, I'm Leslie from Les's Bay, and there's no date or anything. What do we tell our customers? We've lost, in the last 2 seasons, the way the water level is run, we have lost over $65,000 due to the management of Berlin Lake from past years. What can we tell what few customers we have left, what can we tell them for this coming season? Our docks are available starting, the 1st of April. Is there anything that we can say to our customers or people, wanting to get a dock, or what do we tell them?
Hey, Leslie, good to see you again.
Yeah, nice.
One, Leslie, is hopefully what I just was talked about here is more so that at least since the time I've been in command here since last July, I think we've made some progress. Not that we did last fall, but over the winter, actually old Captain White over there did some risk studies and some neat Excel spread charts and all that kind of thing. And then more so, Ms. Hawkins and I, our headquarters in Cincinnati, for those Major General Toys, my boss, we were just there 2 weeks ago and had a discussion with our senior executive service civilian executive there. It was very promising with Mr. Direct and as well as the Division Water Management team. So what can you tell your customers to try to answer that, Leslie? Hey, I'm not going to be able to make you a promise on a date. What I will say is, as soon as earlier today, I was at Megan's desk talking this situation on how we're moving forward with it. I would be willing to come talk to you again in a more formal setting for actually what those things are, and potentially sooner rather than later, I guess.
Yes.
Though we do have a little work ahead of us here in the coming week.
And that would be great, because I'd love for you to, I showed Colonel Klink some of the text message I'm getting from our customers that are not returning.
Jeff and I we just talked that the other day, knowing that the customers are going to be, coming to look for their slips and things of that nature here in the coming weeks.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Stuart Smith. I'm with Friends of the Mahoning River, and I'd just like to point out that we are a watershed group in the area. We work mostly downstream of the reservoirs ourselves, and that we're a potential liaison for information and water quality. I just had a technical question. Was is there other structures and hydrology, and how do you factor meander and the other tributaries and so on into your hydraulic model?
Who's the best suited to answer this one? That is a great question.
They say that.
I'm going to
You don't have to answer it now. But, yeah.
So I'll take the first stab here. So when we talk about the modeling from this study, it is very thorough and encompassing. So when you talk about the tributaries and the watershed, I mentioned the 1,100 square miles that we have in the Mahoning River Basin. All of that is taken into consideration, not just the 37.7% for the 3 reservoirs. So it will be looked at as a system, not just as a reservoir operation standpoint, if that answers it. As far as the exact details on the structures, I'm looking and I'm not finding right now. The expertise exists. I'm not sure, Megan, if you have anything to add towards
Does this
that.
work?
I was asking conceptually, not
Right,
in
okay,
detail.
okay.
So we have RAS models, we have hydrologic HMS models. I'm more the operations of the reservoirs, but we have a whole hydrologic and hydrology section that's going to be doing all that initial upfront loading of the dams, modeling all those tributaries, all the creeks. We've recently done some periodic assessments at all of our reservoirs in the Mahoning River, so we're able to capture that information from those studies that have already been done to assess not just are these dams adequate, do they have enough storage, but how the hydrology works across the whole river watershed. But if you leave your name, we can put you in contact with that subject matter expert. He was unable to attend tonight, but he's being actively engaged with at the district.
Thank you.
I know this won't answer your question necessarily specific to here, but one thing, I mentioned ERDIC earlier, the Engineer Research and Design Center, which is in Pittsburgh. One thing they have is the Waterway Experimental Station there, which I was able to tour about 15 years ago, 20 years ago, I guess it was. And what it is this huge warehouse, I guess we'll say, where they can model all things hydrology. And so specifically, when I was there that day, they were doing the Mississippi River. And so you're looking at the levee heights along Memphis, what happens if this much rain occurs and things of that nature. And those are just some of the things that expertise does exist. We haven't quite gotten to that yet, but hopefully that helps.
Hello, my name is Tom Dawson. I'm a member of Berlin Yacht Club, and this is my friend Mark Diapolito. He's currently our Commodore of Berlin Yacht Club. We have about 20 members of our club here in attendance. Our club has been sailing at Berlin Lake since it was formed, basically, for the past 60 years or so, 60 plus years. I did not come here today with any prepared questions or a prepared statement, but I did want to let you know, Colonel, that we are here as recreational users. We are primarily concerned about maintaining good water levels in the lake throughout the sailing season, through Memorial Day to Labor Day, basically. And we would like to be able to sail in our lake in the fall too, the way others do, in their lakes around the country. Quite frankly, that's the main reason we're here. But I think I can say for our members too that we understand and respect the other purposes and objects for our lake, our reservoir. We appreciate the Army Corps of Engineers. We appreciate you coming here tonight to explain all of this to us. We are grateful to the congressmen who have made arrangements for this financing this study. The only other thing I'd like to say is if there's anything we can do, our members can do at Berlin Yacht Club to help you with your study or interface with the other users of the lake, we want to be involved in that. We are active users of the lake. We're out there at least twice a week, all throughout the summer. So if we can collect any data for you or help you in any other way, just let us know. Mark, did you want to say anything?
I just want to thank the Army Corps engineers for over the years working with our club. I know they've been instrumental at various points in the history and working with Tom here on a variety of issues. So thank you for all the hard work that you do, and we love our lakes. And please, if there's anything you can do to keep the water, we'd appreciate it, and we're here for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark and Tom. Hey, great point, and I appreciate that, and we'll absolutely take that feedback and incorporate that. Hey, on that note, I'm going to take a off key until I get to your question, sir. Where's Chuck at? Chuck Robinson. Who knows? Stand up here, Chuck. So Chuck is our resource manager for Berlin. Mark, guys, have you met Chuck before? Okay, well, he's there at Berlin every day. What I want to do, we're going to give him a quick round of applause. Over here to my right, I have his 30 years of federal service pin. I'm going to present him after the meeting tonight. But in the meantime, Chuck, who initially started at Berlin, when was that? 99, 04 time frame, somewhere in there? 92. North Carolina, other places, but he now has come back as our resource manager because he loved the area so much. So let's give him a quick round of applause.
Hi, I'm Joel Bigley. I'm with Friends of the Mahoning. I can remember over 20 years ago when the Corps was quite involved with the cost estimates, cost benefit ratios and that sort of thing on the removal of the low head dams. And I can remember hearing $100 million to remove the 8 or 9 low head dams along Mahoning. Now we're really starting to get into that, and I'm getting the impression that the cost is way less than that now. And I wondered if you'd comment on that.
I'm going to ask Linda to maybe come up here and talk removable low head.
So I've been around long enough that I'm familiar with what you're talking about. There was an authority, there is an authority for us to do that. At that time, there is material in the river that has to be specially handled. And under federal regulations, that was very cost prohibitive. And so that's why the cost was so high. We ended up not being able to move forward with that effort because of that and the liability. There were far too many unknowns, and I'm not familiar with all the laws, but generally polluter pays, and we couldn't find any of those. So there are a lot of challenges. I'm really pleased that I know that the communities are moving forward with that. And we are able to find potentially some ways in which to partner with all of you to help that. Not under that authorization, but under some different authorizations. So partnering up with federal funds, hopefully that'll help lessen the burden that's going towards the community. I hope I answered that. Did I answer that?
Well, I also take it that the water quality is by biological enhancement, it's a lot better, yet the sediments are still there. So I guess time has helped us lessen the cost. Is that?
I mean, that's a great potential. I think that you also have some testing that you all did to validate that it's not as bad as originally was estimated as well. And I think some of it potentially may have gotten downriver as well.
Is the Corps still doing sampling, or is it strictly Ohio EPA now?
I'll have to phone a friend of Rose. Rose, are you familiar?
So we collect water quality data real time and also grab samples, but we are not collecting sediment quality data. We did during the study period for the environmental dredge project, and that was like in 1999 to about 2002, but since then we haven't collected any sediment data.
Well, will the Corps be involved with the Lowville dam removal?
At this point, we did get a letter of interest, so we will be working with Eastgate to determine what makes the most sense. So for us, we could help remove some low head dams. However, a lot of our regulations are very tight, and it would not make financial sense for us to get involved in the removal of the material. So we've been having discussions on who would do what.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening. Marge Connor, Berlin Lake resident. Excuse me. I have two questions. The first one involves the upcoming, or this whole plan and study that's being performed. And I noticed in looking at your display out front, a three-step process. However, what I also noted was that recreation was not included in any of those 3 steps. And I know that's been tossed around for years, whether it's an authorized purpose, etc. One thing I would like to ask is that recreation be specifically included in that study format in the 3-step process. As you know, it's important to many of us, and we also believe it's fully authorized by a number of statutes, number of federal statutes that control the operation of Berlin and the other reservoirs. So I see no reason why it shouldn't be as important as low flow augmentation, flood control and the other uses of those dams and the effect on the downstream water quality. So that's a request. The second thing I'd like to address is the whole idea of the water level at Berlin. Many of us have been working for years with the Corps to maintain that water level. And I've heard a lot tonight, and I hate to use the word waffling, but that's a word that comes to mind, is that, gee, we'd like to do something in 2019. Those of us that were involved last year were involved in the 2018 deviation plan, and we all know what happened there. It was unsuccessful. For 2019, I am pleased to hear that you're working with your Cincinnati organization, but we'd like something a little more definitive than we're going to try. As we know, there's been a lot of study done. We've looked at that lake many different ways. There is nothing that would lead us to believe that Berlin Lake cannot be held at the summer pool through the recreation season, we'll say mid-September, with any adverse effects on either the operation of the other reservoirs or the downstream water quality. We know when Milton was changed, there was no change to the plan. It was simply changed. No adverse effect. The water level at Berlin historically has not followed the deviation plan. No adverse effect. We know the flood frequency is the lowest in the fall, during the months of July, August, September, and October. No negative downstream effect if the water level is maintained at the summer pool as it relates to flood control. I could go on, but I won't. I think everyone on the stage is well aware of our position. I would ask for something more definitive from you than simply, we'll try. This is important to the recreational users and to the businesses of Berlin, and we really are getting somewhat fatigued with hearing, we'll try. And to wait 24 to 36 months, and we don't know what's going to happen with your plan. So I'd like a more definitive statement from the Corps that we'll do more than just kind of work and try. We're going to make a concerted effort and make sure that lake stays up for the recreational users at summer pool during the recreation season. And thank you for that.
Good to see you again, Marge. The first one, on the study on the billboard or the tripod out there. Hey, absolutely, I think that request, it will be considered on the study. It is, I mentioned before, that's the quantifiable gathering of data, samples, rain, climate, things of that nature with the request of recreation. So I absolutely acknowledge that is a purpose and acknowledge that it will be part of the study as well. It makes sense. As to your second portion there, as we know the history from last year, the timing was impeccable as the deviation request went up to 2 days before I took command of the district, and then we received it later on. So last year was a tough year there. As far as the will try and the concerted effort, we absolutely are taking a concerted effort, and we have since we had met just a few months ago in my office there. As we mentioned before, I can pontificate a little bit, but in general, we've taken some steps just in the last 2 weeks. And that started with our quarterly meetings in Cincinnati, where Lynn and I had that as a topic that we discussed with Mr. Durrett and Mr. McClune, and has continued on to our district there. So I think the offering I has is that, as we have in the past, but yet I don't think we had a lot of information other than data gathering on our own end, as well as working with you and the data that you provided. I think now we're postured to take steps forward as to a way that I can adequately, or we as a district can adequately mitigate the risk that would impact everyone in this room based on events that may happen from standpoint of flood control. Sir.
My name is Duke. I have a business on Berlin Reservoir. I can't quite remember the flood of 13, but pretty damn close to it. Okay, so I've been there a while. My one comment is, I've seen some improvements because when I started, the winter level was 10,009 every year until shortly before the dam valves were overhauled. Now this winter pool is 1016. That's a 7-foot increase. Maybe it has something to do with the 7-foot head dam flood level at Levenberg. I don't know that. My question is, you're taking out head dams, allowing them to be taken out on the river, starting at Lowellville. And I think there's 2 or 3 above that. How much more flow is Berlin going to have to supply to make their recreational plans work down there that the cities are planning on doing? Youngstown with developing their waterfront, Lowellville putting in canoe liveries, kayak liveries. What effect is that going to have on Martha's and my place with this water level? And I'd like to hear an answer to the other lady's question, when? But I've been there 40 years, I don't want to jeopardize myself, okay? Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Duke. And yes, I know you're not that old, Duke, come on. Hey, it would be speculative for me to answer that as far as a timeline or the quantity. I think that the study would look at that as a system. But it would be too speculative for me to give a date or an amount of water or something. I don't have that ability to answer that. Megan, I don't know if there's anything you have to add.
Well, from our perspective is if you remove the low head dams, it doesn't mean you need more water in the river. It's just reducing the stage at which the river is rated upon. The way we determine flow in the river is based on the depth of water, and then we compute a flow from that. So for us internally, we would just have to re-rate all of our rating tables. We're doing that very similarly on the Westport River, a tributary to the Mon River in the southern area, where we're coordinating with the local agencies there, where they're removing a lot of low head dams. It has not changed the schedule at Stonewall Jackson, and at this time, unless preclusive to any type of watershed investigation, I don't foresee that changing the schedule at Berlin. I only see it as helping the ecosystem, but not having any direct benefit or impact to how we release water and the quantity of water that we release from Berlin, Kirwan, or Mosquito.
As Joel mentioned earlier, I think on those removal of those low crest dams, any discussion I guess I'll say that I had with my team has been from, and with Rose, has been improvement in ecosystems and water quality, but not discussions about quantity from reservoirs. It's more so about what does the Water Association, the Mahoning River Association look for.
Hello, Tim Taylor, President of the Berlin Lake Association. Thank you for putting this meeting together. We very much need this. I want to thank everybody that's worked so hard to get us this far. And our organization's worked on this for 15 years now, and it's glad finally to get the traction that we see we're getting at this point. But I do want to make sure and have some questions as far as we did finally get the funding. Thanks to Congress. The $1 million for this. Now, what I need to know is that going to be enough to complete your study? Because we have heard numbers from all over the place. From initially it was 500,000 to up to 2 million to cover this. Is that now determined that this will, over the 3-year period of the study, get this covered? And then in addition to that, we had this deviation request, and I know that was when you first started, and to follow up on Marge's comments, I mean, the deviation request was turned down the first week of July, and And at that time, I mean, the current water guide for Berlin Lake has us 6 weeks at summer pool. That's it. And it starts being drawn down the 3rd week of June, to the point that last year we were at winter pool at August 29th. And that was a drastic drawdown and completely was exactly what the guide had called for that was put together years and years ago. Can we look, and we're trying to figure out how this happened, that it was so drastic, and that we can get back to what was common sense of drawdown time frame. I think we're all looking for just a way to do that. You've specified that you will be working with that. We'd like to know that it would go more than 1 year, and at least we'd get a deviation for the amount of time it takes to do this study. Then we're looking for this graph to go away and lengthen to the period of of course, the recreational season. So those are my two questions. Good to see you again, Colonel.
All right, Tim, you too. I'm gonna let Lynn take the money thing on the study, but I'll address the second part of that real quick. Yeah, the submission in early July and then late July denial of that. I will say that I think a lot of the work that the team did prior to when I got there did educate us a lot. Speculative, but I think a lot of that can help feed some of this study and make this money go further. I will say though, part of the background behind, we mentioned the deviation. A deviation is a 1-year adjustment to the existing plan, and that's one reason why our attitude towards I just don't want a 1 year and then do it again the next year and then the next year. I would like to do an adaptive risk management so that we were looking at it as I want to say the way it's been done, but the way that we can adequately manage that risk based on changing environment, and we are confident that that's within our abilities. Leonard, you want to talk about the money and the study and quantity and why it is what it is?
So, do we have enough money, was your question, basically, to get this complete? Right now, I can't answer that. We have the team looking at all the issues in the watershed initially to see exactly what we need to look at. So for instance, we know that we have issues at Mosquito with invasive plants, harmful algal blooms. We have issues or some challenges with recreation at Berlin and the lake levels. What else is out there that we aren't aware of that we really maybe can try to solve by this study? And once we determine what that is, then we will scope it, see where we can take some risk on things, make some assumptions. If you all have information that just reduces the cost and doesn't make us have to go through some of those efforts, and maybe we can get universities to partner with us on some. So I know it sounds like, I'm waffling. I'm really just trying to understand what the scope and scale is before I really answer your question. Should be enough, just don't know yet.
So I'll let Craig talk here in a second. So as we got this money in the first week of December, that we got the good news, then here we are just a month later, and what's happening in the district is, okay, we have money, we're going to form a team, and so we form a project team to attack it. So we're in the process right now of kind of finding out that timeline, the critical path, all the elements. Who are my specialists within my team, or do I need to reach out across the Corps of Engineers for another expert that can help with this? I'll talk to Craig real quick.
Yes, I'm the operations project manager for our reservoirs, so I'll be managing the overall water control manual updates for Berlin, MJK, and Mosquito. Right now, as Lena said and the commander said, we are still gathering the costs from our different resource providers. Basically, got the water quality modeling cost off the other day, working with our H&H department to get those models. A lot of the cost is the upfront data collection. And as Lena said and the commander said, if there's any, we'll be doing outreach to try to see if there's other models that have already been done that we can incorporate into the study, try to save some money on that end. Now, we are budgeted on a yearly basis. The goal is not to go back for additional funds. We always try to, we said we could do it for $1 million. We're going to try to scope it that way. However, we do have some flexibility through the work plan every year to go back, because we do need to. I wouldn't anticipate that being probably not this fiscal year. We have enough this year. It would probably be in the second year or third year if we did have to go back. And we also do have flexibility with our own budgets to cover, if it's 10% above, we do have some flexibility within our own district budget to handle that. So.
Hi, I'm Chuck. I'm a lifelong recreational boater and landowner out at Berlin. Colonel, you might be off the hook on this question because it's a water quality question. And I'm really curious about when and how the water quality studies are done because most importantly, do you test on various days of the week? Because if you've ever been out there on Monday morning, you know that the water's a lot nastier on Monday morning than it is on Sunday evening. And secondly, do you do it at varying water levels? Because if you reduce from full summer pull by about 2 feet, I know I spend a lot more time scrubbing my boat when we're just a few feet down because there's a lot more nastiness in the water.
Rose?
So we have two ways to monitor water. One of them is called real-time and continuous. What that means is it's running all the time and it collects data every 15 minutes. And we have a water quality gauge at Youngstown on Mahoning River, real-time and continuous. Another one at Lowellville on Mahoning River. And then in Berlin Lake, we actually have a buoy that has a series of temperature monitors every 3 feet, and also a meter that measures other water quality parameters. And those data are real-time and continuous. So they reflect seasonal conditions and operational conditions, everything, dry weather, wet weather. So those are the basis. And then we augment that with grab samples, both in the lake and downstream of Mahoning.
As a follow-up, where's that buoy located?
Right by the dam. You can stand on the dam and look and you'll see a yellow buoy with some red balls around it.
Okay.
It's right there. You can look at the data. It's wqdatalive.com/public.
I'm not going to remember
/ And it's operational usually from March or April through November and into early December. We take it out in the winter because of the ice.
Sure. Thank you.
Right now the water's cold too, but.
Jim Benio, and I'm a landowner in Berlin over 30 years. First, I'd like to thank the Corps for coming, and I want to thank them for all the service they do for all of us across the nation and in this valley. My question is this: I've heard the word team several times tonight, and I'm assuming the team is composed of the district, Pittsburgh District and Cincinnati District. Has any consideration been given to possible general public to be part of that team? I'm sure there's people in here that would be more than willing to volunteer.
I'll let Craig talk, but absolutely.
Yeah, as we're laying out the schedule for, one of the things we're going to be doing in probably the next 2 or 3 weeks, hopefully, is getting a webpage set up for that outreach. So you guys can participate with us. Andrea is leading our outreach effort right now. Our plan is to go to each different watershed, or reservoir, I should say, in late spring or springtime, early summer for our initial kickoff. Again, the user feedback, as I think Duke talked about, there's a lot of different uses for water in the basin, and it's important for us to collect that. So in the master plans that we're doing right now at some of our reservoirs, we are getting that public outreach. We're making sure you guys are part of the team, whether not necessarily doing a product, but necessarily the involvement and the input in the product and making our products out there for you guys to review as they're being prepared, not at the end. So very important. Again, look for the webpage probably as soon as we get a little further along. We'll probably have that up in February timeframe, and then we'll start laying out the schedule for the meetings. We're again planning on late spring or springtime, early summer to put meetings together at each reservoir itself, so we can gather all that specific site-specific information, and then the basin as a whole. So.
Yeah, Jim, I think kind of what you're getting at, and I'd had that conversation with Tim Taylor here before too about the partnerships. And so I mentioned earlier about Lieutenant General Simonite, our boss in Washington, D.C., who's worried about border walls and things of that nature as well right now. But the term revolutionize is there, and part of that is the inclusion of, do studies, does data have to be collected or done just by my team within the building in Pittsburgh downtown? No, and I think there's some opportunities that whether an existing study had been done by the state, by locals, by university, things of that nature, but that's the data that we would need as we do these public engagements to get that on. Does it meet what we need to quantify that, and then that makes the dollar go farther, if that makes sense, so that we can get it more thorough. Because in the end, that's what we're looking for, is get all this data, do a thorough assessment, and then these water control manuals will either be recommended for an adjustment or not.
Thank you.
I'm Michael Harvey, a resident of Youngstown and a member of the Friends of the Mahoning River. This question, I think, is just more for clarification for myself, and maybe other people have the same question. We here in Youngstown with Mill Creek Park, with the stormwater runoff, have an issue with waste getting into the water. Will the water control study be looking into how to mitigate storm runoff or waste into storm runoff, and looking into things of that nature?
So the study does look at runoff. It doesn't look at really ways of mitigating that. We have other authorities that we could partner with you on, and if you want to see me afterwards, we can talk. I'll give you my card, and we could see what we can do. There are different, like I said, different authorities. We may be able to look at planning assistance to states, which helps us look and see where all the issues are. Sometimes it's more than just one area. It's, you have a lot of paving, so that creates issues. There's storm water. And just to identify the problem first is very helpful before you start working it. So, it looks at the total runoff, but doesn't look at the mitigation specifically.
Good question on that, as far as there are some opportunities for us to assist communities with the design and with mitigating those. For example, we work with PWSA in Pittsburgh within the city there for some opportunities when they need assistance.
Good evening. My name is Patricia Dunbar, and I'm also with the Friends of the Mahoning River. You might think that we're overcoming you here, but we're really interested in water quality for the Mahoning River. And when I took a look at and listed the different parameters you were looking at, the different inputs, there was a lot to do with water quality. You have water quality modeling, you have changes in watershed characteristics that you'll be looking at, changes in development and industry and other demographics. My question is, because I've seen this so many times, is problems with wetlands. As you guys know, wetlands are a major contributor to water quality. And yet what I have seen numerous times in many areas is that when developers go in to develop, there's really, there might be wetland mitigation where they destroy this wetland and they put it over here in this water basin, and they think that it's going to really do good. So my question is, do you look at wetlands in your water quality modeling, or in anything to do with any of these different inputs that you're going to be studying? Will wetlands be something that you look at? And then I'm also going to follow that up with a request to say that if not, you please do so, because like I said, we are finding wetlands being lost everywhere, and a lot of times it's done without even any permitting requested to either the Army Corps or the Ohio EPA. It's just the developers go in and just destroy them, and they're very important, as you know. So that's my comment.
Okay, I'm gonna have Rose answer here too, but thanks, Patricia, for those comments. And you're right, I don't think I brought one of my regulatory team members tonight, but you are right how we work with the permitting of the wetlands and for regulatory on navigable waters there, waters in the U.S. But Rose, do you want to talk a little bit more about the mitigation and study?
So as far as the water control manual updates go, we're not planning to look directly at wetlands and wetland function or even wetland delineation. But for the work that we'll be hopefully doing in the future on the low-head dam removals on the Mahoning River, I believe there are opportunities to incorporate into those projects efforts to enhance or increase the size of riverine wetlands.
I just want to give a quick PSA because it is such an important issue. If you notice that your neighbor or there's some other development that you believe is damaging a wetlands and you're unsure or think that it may be unpermitted, go to our website. We have a report of potential violation. You can provide all your information there. You can provide photos. It will go to our regulatory department and we'll send we'll have it investigated by our regulatory division. And so it's very important. I get calls routinely from people who say, my neighbor just blocked this stream or is digging up this wetland. And it's really, we don't have enough eyes out there to do it ourselves. So your eyes and your actions are important. Don't think you're being a bother. Let us know if you see something out there that you don't think is permitted or maybe damaging a wetlands.
Not so much a question, but kind of a statement. My name is Ed Dean. I'm a trustee in Deerfield Township. I've lived there my whole life, and I want to thank you guys for this meeting and the information. I do see an attitude change coming from you guys from when I was a kid. Back then, why is the water level being let down? Well, the Corps owns it, they run it, they're going to do what they want to do, and that was pretty much let go like that. You made the statement that a lot of changes have happened over the years. Yes, there has a lot of changes. Society is changing for one thing. We have a big group now. We're very dedicated to getting a lot of help with our lake, and Berlin Lake's all I'm worried about, you know. Honestly, that's what we're after. Not only do we have the core property there in Deerfield Township that encompasses all those acres, we get no tax revenue from that. We have quite a few hundred acres of public hunting area in Deerfield Township we get no tax revenue from for property taxes or anything. Half our township was cut in half when the lake was put in, so instead of having 30 miles of roads, we travel 80 miles to plow roads because we have to go both sides of the lake and then clear back around. A boat launch was put in on the south side of the lake, beautiful boat launch, a lot of work for a lot of people, $1.3 million. What that boat launch did immediately to Deerfield, it killed our restaurants some more, it killed our docks, it killed Duke and Leslie's place because nobody from the south end of the state came there anymore. They came to that boat launch, they didn't come to Deerfield. So it is really important. It's so important that one of the other trustees and the Portage County Commissioner, we actually made our way to the Pentagon to plead our case up there for this. And we're proud that we did that. We worked hard to get that done. And I do see an attitude change coming from you guys, but we're a big group and we are pretty determined that we really need this to happen. I'm looking forward to working with you guys. I hope you're on board as much as you say you are, and I really do feel that you are. I'm getting a much better feeling than I've ever had in all the years I lived in Deerfield. So we're not going to give up, and we hope you guys don't give up. I think we can come to an understanding that everybody can live with. So thank you for your efforts now and in the future.
Yes, we don't have anybody at the mics, but somebody may have handed in a comment to one of our resource managers. Okay. I think we may be coming to the end of the meeting. We will stick around. I'll leave you with I think there's a nice photo. We appreciate your time here. Please keep in touch with us. We're going to stick around if you want to come up and talk to us. But again, appreciate your attendance. Please be careful going home. Stay warm over the week, and thank you very much for coming.